Imagine is the most powerful word in the English language. Imagine. And it spurs people to think, what if we did this? What if we tried that? I have always said you lead people and you manage assets. And what we need is for innovators to be pulling young people alongside them and opening up their thought process to what they could do.
We welcome Matt Schulz and Senator Marsha Blackburn.
Good morning. What a terrific honor. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with us today.
I'm delighted to do it, and we had such a great meeting earlier this week in DC, and I think the entire conference room we were in was about the size of the distance between these chairs up here. A little bit more close quarters.
We got up close and personal. It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
We had the opportunity to discuss the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and I was overwhelmed by the reception that folks from my industry received, and what a beautiful conference. And I was thinking as we were backstage, imagine if you were in an industry like I am, that 3 years ago you received a phone call that your bank was going to stop doing business with you because of what you did. And imagine if the prior administration said to you that their goal is to push all of your industry outside of the US. And now imagine if we have a Bitcoin president in the White House, and I'm seated next to the future governor of the great state of Tennessee. and we get to talk about Bitcoin. So thank you so much.
Absolutely delighted to do it.
So I wanted to get started and talk about some things that matter to everybody here. And I think Bitcoin, tech, AI, it all distills down to freedom.
And energy.
And absolutely, and energy. It really all comes down to freedom. So with that, I'm interested to hear your perspective on how innovators can balance the drive for disruption with the responsibility to uphold eternal values like family, community, and freedom.
Well, the fact that we are innovating speaks to that desire for freedom. And I think it's important to realize Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 of our Constitution gives innovators the ability, it reserves the right to the innovator and the creator to benefit from their ideas. And that is important. That is that nugget of freedom. And that's one of those founding principles that innovators here can stand on. So I think that's kind of a basis for it. Now, because of that, throughout our nation's history, we have had several industrial revolutions. We had the ag revolution, where we learned how to do more with production agriculture and not only feed ourselves but the world. Then we moved to what was called the Industrial Revolution, which was mass manufacturing, learning how to manufacture so that we had equipment in automobiles and moved forward with how we could produce more. as a nation. Then we had a tech revolution. And now we have an advanced technology revolution that is in place. And how are we going to build on utilizations of the virtual space? So innovating and preserving those values, to me, go hand in hand, because as you innovate, you are challenging the status quo. And what we have seen happen over the last many years is people have wanted to standardize. They've wanted to centralize government. And they have tried to do one size fits all. And now, what do we see? Because of innovation, people are saying, let's send power and authority back to the states, back to the people. We have companies that are interested in entrepreneurs and different types of innovations and utilizations. Think about the number of cities that have entrepreneur centers. And we are so fortunate to have Bitcoin Park here, because that is where individuals that are in emerging tech and in Bitcoin, you build that hub of energy around saying, we've got a great idea. You know, I think Nashville is a great city for creators. And at church, I've got a friend who's a songwriter. And one day I asked why they left the West Coast and came here. And their answer, I will never, ever forget. They said, Nashville is a great place to try something and to fail. And I said, talk to me about that. And the response was, everybody in Nashville, whether they're in healthcare or they're in banking or financial services, or they're a songwriter or a screenwriter, they come up with a concept, they work it around. If it doesn't commercialize, then they go back and they try another concept. And the fact that people are always trying to innovate, that is one of the great things about our state, and I absolutely love it and treasure it.
You know, I had the opportunity to meet with half a dozen people yesterday wandering around Bitcoin Park, and the collaborative vibe that exists there and the creativity that was generated from those meetings was really unlike anywhere that I've ever been discussing our industry. You know, it's policy, it's energy, it's strategy, but to have an open forum for free thinkers, what a gift. And I learned a little bit of history about Bitcoin Park. I didn't realize that it used to be Florida Georgia Line's recording studio, and got the full tour. What an incredible opportunity that you have here in this state, and we're grateful to be a part of it. And you know, CleanSpark, we're fortunate that a couple of our guys post up there and call it home.
That is awesome. And just an attaboy to Rod Rudy. I love the fact that the conference theme is Imagine If. Imagine is the most powerful word in the English language. Imagine. And it spurs people to think, what if we did this? What if we tried that? So I appreciate that.
Indeed. So in your mind, in what ways can networks of innovators, such as the folks at Bitcoin Park, embody not just technological progress, but also moral and cultural traditions?
Well, and there again, I think the way you embody those traditions is by inviting younger people in, and by providing internships, mentors, choosing to mentor people. I find it always so interesting. I think we're at a time where we don't need so much managers, we need leaders. And I have always said, you lead people and you manage assets. And what we need is for innovators to be pulling young people alongside them and opening up their thought process to what they could do with different applications. As I lead the Senate in the nation's quantum initiative, and trying to get that restarted. And as we're looking at how you put guardrails on AI, I'm constantly reminding my colleagues that you do not legislate to the technology, because the technology will be outdated before the ink is dry on signing a bill. You have to look at the utilizations and put your guardrails there, because you never know what is going to come. And 20 years ago, who would have thought blockchain, quantum? Who would have thought about AI? Who would have thought about some of the utilizations? Who would have thought we would have had a space force? So we ought not to limit ourselves. We should open to that next generation.
I appreciate that feedback, and it was interesting to see the engagement from many of your colleagues on the Hill as they're now more open to the discussion. You know, I remember 4 years ago when we got to go meet with different members, and there was so much resistance to a lot of our industry and such misinformation. I mean, the idea that this magic internet money, as they were kind of pushing back, is now providing all this value, not only to the blockchain, but also as a tool to help stabilize the utility grid. I mean, the innovation is nothing short of incredible. And, you know, to your credit, in leadership, a lot of your colleagues have certainly come around to the idea that the time has come for this.
You know, Matt, people resist what they don't understand. And so, like the roundtable we did this week with you all, having people come in and talk through how we get the Bitcoin Act, which of course Senator Lummis and I have done so much work on that, establishing a strategic reserve. And the president did it by executive order, and now we're trying to codify that. So that as we look at our nation's holdings, you've got gold, you've got silver, you have the dollar. We want that as the reserve currency globally. And then we also have Bitcoin, and having that as a part of our strategic reserve is important. And as we move forward with this legislation, Senator Lummis and I have legislation that I will have before our committee at Finance Committee that is a tax bill, and it would deal with wash sales and mining and stacking and de minimis. And we're going to do a hearing on that week after next. And how important it is to do those hearings, because that is a form of not only information share, but also of education.
I'm excited to hear the outcome of that, because as we talk to members, it was interesting, and they talk about the ways that in a budget neutral manner we can add to the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And there was pushback that the idea that Bitcoin that may be seized would contribute to that reserve. But some of the members were pushing back that the assets that are seized are used to fund the different organizations that were part of the seizure, so there was going to be some resistance to that. But there were some really spirited, really thoughtful, really creative ideas on how we can add to that strategic reserve in a budget neutral way. So I'm excited to hear what comes of that session.
Yeah, I think it will be a great hearing, and our website will have that information, blackburn.senate.gov, and then also on social media at Marsha Blackburn. And I would encourage everybody to listen in on that, because it will be a new type hearing for us at Finance Committee.
That's exciting. So as we talk a little bit more about AI, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, what risks do you see when AI governance and other freedom technologies are developed without grounding in first principles?
Yes, and we have that love-hate relationship with AI here in Tennessee. Our healthcare innovators, financial service, logistics, and advanced manufacturing, they utilize it every day and they're doing great work. Predictive diagnosis, disease analysis, post-op, all of that in healthcare is tremendous. When you talk to companies like Amazon and you see how they are utilizing AI, it is impressive. When it comes to our creative community with our singers, our songwriters, our authors, our publishers, our preachers and online teachers and sales training individuals that are all working in the virtual space, they are very fearful of what AI will do to their ability to earn a living. And the other component where there is harm is with big tech and the social media platforms and what they're doing to children. And the mental health of our nation's children is suffering tremendously. When you look at the metaverse, when you look at these chat bots, what they are pushing onto children is something that we need these firms to work with us to protect children. There are laws in the physical world that protect our children from meeting pedophiles and predators and being trafficked and from being sold drugs and alcohol and tobacco or exposed to pornography. But in the virtual space, there's not. And that is problematic for AI. When it comes to protecting our creative community, Senator Coons, Senator Klobuchar, Senator Tillis, and I have the No Fakes Act, and that would protect the name, image, likeness, and voice of individuals that work in the virtual space. Now, underpinning all of this is the right to privacy, and we have not yet passed a federally preemptive online privacy bill. And I've been working on that, believe it or not, for 13 years. And so having the ability for individuals to preserve their privacy, having the ability for them to put that firewall over the information that they choose to hold private so that the LLMs are not training on it. And the reason I led the opposition to an AI moratorium, a 10-year moratorium, and got a 99-to-1 vote in stripping a moratorium is because right now the states are the ones that are regulating. And while we do not want a patchwork, we prefer a federally preemptive model. The federal government has not passed anything that protects those rights of individuals.
That's interesting. You know, I was listening. Cardinal Dolan was on TV this morning, and he was sharing very similar thoughts to what you just did about how do we balance innovation and protecting children and protecting the hateful content that's spread. And, you know, it was obviously it's been a sad week in our nation with the loss of Charlie Kirk, but he talked about how these bots can stir up hate and environment where there's such divisiveness, and talked about how the folks that were responsible for that had been radicalized in these anonymous chat rooms and such. And it was just a sad state of affairs. But what he doubled down on was exactly what you said, and that we have to ensure that there are guardrails that we protect our youth.
That's exactly right. You know, when you look at AI and what it brings, as I said, in so many industries, in the work that you all do, the efficiencies that are there, the ability to root out fraud. So there is that good. As I said, with logistics, there is that good. You look at autonomous vehicles and the work that is being done there, and we're trying to get an AV bill done. But then you look at what is happening to children, and you talk to any principal, any pediatrician, any parent, and they will tell you there have to be protections for our children. So if anyone is in the audience from Meta or Google or Snap or Discord, please, my door is open. I welcome the conversation.
Thank you for sharing that. How can regional values and traditions, particularly here in Tennessee, but more broadly across the United States, inform global conversations about digital innovation?
You know, I love this because I think that when we talk about innovation and what we're going to do with emerging tech, what we're going to do with nuclear energy, I think Tennessee ought to be number one. We are a well-led state. And, pardon me, one of the things Senator Warner and I have been focused on is preserving standards here as U.S. standards so that we do not have China and some adversarial nations trying to set standards. So we want to welcome more conferences and symposiums like this. We think it's great. Now, when it comes to Tennessee, we are the perfect test bed for innovative technology. And as I've been leading our effort on the quantum initiative, I've got a quantum test bed for near-term applications that will be a part of this. I said our whole state could be a test bed. When you look at nuclear energy and the fact that we need baseload power in order to really fuel some of the data centers and like some of the great work that XAI is doing over in Memphis. We're so excited about that. It's impressive what they are doing. But we should be the nation's leader there. TVA received the first in the nation permission for an SMR. And moving forward with this is positive. The microreactor technology is positive. You look at companies like Kairos, like Oklo, Orano, and the work that they are doing. We are going to have the energy that is necessary. Also, in Tennessee, we do not have a state income tax, and we do not have a state property tax. We have the lowest per capita debt burden of any state in this country. And we, because of that, welcome entrepreneurs and encourage innovation. And we want all of you to think about Tennessee as the home for your business. We also know that when you have research and development taking place in your state, that many times you have commercialization and manufacturing that is going to follow that. So we appreciate that, the great work that you all are doing. And we're thrilled to have you here. And we hope your expansions are here. When you look at communities, they're excited to hear about mining operations coming in because it lowers their residential rate on energy because they're having industrial users that are helping pull that power in. Many times, as we develop the microreactors and the SMRs, these will be opportunities to sell back to the grid. And that will help lower that kilowatt hour cost. So I think we're the perfect spot for that.
I'm inclined to agree with you. We've had the warmest reception as we've continued to grow and expand, and just opened a 60 megawatt facility in Jackson, Tennessee. And it's been exciting to engage with the community and invite folks in, learn about what we do and how we do it, and to not only have a positive impact on the utility ratepayers, but to also create meaningful jobs. And in areas where industry and manufacturing maybe aren't here anymore, maybe they've gone offshore, but to create these opportunities for folks to be able to stay home, to come back after you get an education, and to have a career with a good future and a strong outlook. So we're really blessed, really grateful for the reception that you've spearheaded for us here in Tennessee, and thank you for that. And thank you for joining me today to get this started. And I'm excited to see the rest of the panel.
Well, listen, I want to say a welcome to all of you. We are delighted that you are in Tennessee, and I want to thank you for being creators and innovators. And I want to encourage you to think about Tennessee as the home for the companies that you are going to dream up and develop, and we look forward to having the opportunity to say Made in Tennessee. Thank you all.
Senator Blackburn.
What
Thank
a
you.
pleasure. Thank you.